A billionaire CEO finds a little boy selling his trophies. Mom says pride doesn't pay the bills. What he decides to do next leaves both the boy and his mom in complete disbelief. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching us from, and please like this video to support the channel. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. The city blurred past the window, a wash of lights and rain. Marcus Holt leaned back in his seat, fingers drumming restlessly. His phone buzzed for the third time in 10 minutes. More texts, more calls, all about the scandal plastered across every news site. He ignored it, jaw tight. The accusations were false, but no one cared. Damage control was a joke when people had already made up their minds. The driver cleared his throat. "Where to, sir?" "Just drive." The car veered off the main roads, weaving through unfamiliar streets with modest houses and small shops. The skyscrapers faded into brick buildings and cracked sidewalks, and the tension in Marcus's shoulders eased a bit. They stopped at a light near a small park, and Marcus's gaze snagged on a boy no older than 8, setting up a folding table under a lamppost. The boy's cheeks were pink from the cold, dark curls sticking out from under a knit hat. He pulled out a few trophies and medals, arranging them with careful precision. Marcus frowned. "Pull over." The driver glanced back, confused, but did as told. Marcus stepped out, rain biting at his skin, and approached. The boy didn't notice at first, too focused on straightening a soccer trophy. "Selling these?" The boy startled, nearly knocking over a medal. Yeah," he mumbled, straightening quickly. $5 each." Marcus's brow arched. $5? The boy scowled. "They're mine. I can sell them for whatever I want." A smile tugged at Marcus's lips. "Fair enough. Why are you selling them?" The boy's gaze dropped. "My mom needs money for the bills," he said. "After my dad died, things got hard." Marcus's fingers flexed in his coat pockets. The boy's voice was matter-of-fact, too blunt for someone his age. His eyes flickered over the trophy soccer, track, spelling bees, some scuffed, some missing their plates, but all polished and clean. "Your mom's okay with this?" "She doesn't know," the boy muttered. "But Mom says pride doesn't pay the bills, so..." Marcus's jaw tightened. The words hit harder than they should have. He glanced at the trophies again, little pieces of victory, of childhood piled up and for sale on a rainy street corner. "How much for all of them?" The boy's eyes went wide. "All of them?" Marcus nodded. "That's no," the boy blurted, cheeks flushing. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," Marcus said. "You're selling, I'm buying." The boy's fingers twisted in the hem of his jacket, eyes darting to the trophies, uncertainty written all over his face. "It's too much," he mumbled. "I don't want something for nothing." Marcus's lips quirked, impressed despite himself. "How about a job then?" The boy blinked. "A job? Part-time," Marcus clarified. "Simple stuff, running files, making copies. It'll pay better than $5 a trophy." The boy hesitated, chewing on his bottom lip. I'll ask my mom," he muttered. "But maybe." Marcus pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out. "Take your time. Call me if you decide." The boy stared at the card like it might bite him, then took it cautiously, eyes darting to the name Marcus Holt, CEO. Thank you?" he stammered. "Anytime." Before heading back to the car, Marcus slid a few folded bills onto the table, quick and subtle. "For the ones I touched," he said. "Can't sell them as new now." The boy stared, cheeks turning pink, but didn't argue. Marcus slid into the back seat, shaking out the rain from his coat. The trophies, piled awkwardly beside him, glinted softly under the streetlights. Each one gleamed, polished and worn, a reminder of late nights and small victories, sold off for grocery money. His fingers tapped absently against his knee, the boy's words playing over in his mind: "Pride doesn't pay the bills." It stuck with him all the way back to the penthouse, even as the skyline came back into view, glass and steel reflecting the rain. The apartment was dark and cold, lights blinking on with a soft hum when he stepped inside. Marcus tossed his coat over a chair, breath leaving in a heavy sigh. His eyes drifted to the trophies, still stacked haphazardly in his trunk. He hesitated, fingers flexing, then stepped back out, grabbing the trophies one by one. The living room table was soon crowded with them, gold and silver, some a bit chipped, others gleaming under the dim lights. A spelling bee trophy caught his eye, first place, district level. The gold letters were half worn, the base cracked. Marcus's fingers traced over the nameplate absently, the boy's words still echoing. He slumped back on the couch, head tilting against the cushions. His eyes stayed fixed on the trophies, the weight in his chest dull and insistent. He'd been that kid once, running papers at the post office for a few dollars, skipping meals so his mom wouldn't have to. He'd buried those memories under skyscrapers and billion-dollar deals, but now they flooded back, raw and uninvited. He scrubbed a hand down his face, breath hitching. Sleep wouldn't come easy tonight, but that was nothing new. His phone buzzed with another call. He ignored it, eyes still on the trophies. Tomorrow, he'd call his assistant. A job for the boy was the least he could do. Maybe it wouldn't fix much, but it was a start. The trophies were still scattered across the table, catching the morning light as Marcus poured a second cup of coffee, eyes bleary and heavy. Sleep hadn't come, and the few hours he'd spent with his eyes shut had been filled with restless thoughts and the boy's words playing on repeat. Pride doesn't pay the bills. He scrubbed a hand down his face, fingers curling tight around the mug. It wasn't his problem, he had enough fires to put out with the board breathing down his neck and his PR team all but kicking down his door for a statement. Yet every time he glanced at those trophies, something twisted in his gut. He sighed, grabbing his phone and tapping quickly through his contacts. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered, crisp and professional. "Jeremy, I need a background check," Marcus said, voice brisk. "The boy from yesterday, Matteo Delmore. Find out what you can about his family." Jeremy hesitated, confusion bleeding through the line. Yes, sir. Anything specific?" "Everything," Marcus muttered, eyes fixed on the chipped base of a spelling bee trophy. "And keep it quiet." A few hours later, his inbox chimed with an email marked urgent. Marcus clicked it open, eyes scanning quickly over the lines of text. Matteo Delmore, age 8. Mother, Ashley Delmore, 32. Widowed. Works 2 jobs, waitress at a diner on 7th and evening shifts at a laundromat. Rent overdue by 2 weeks. His jaw tightened. He shut the laptop with a snap, tossing the file aside, but the words stuck, heavy and uncomfortable. 2 jobs, overdue bills, and a kid selling his trophies for pocket change. Marcus blew out a breath, fingers tapping absently against the edge of the desk. He'd been that kid once, watching his mom juggle bills and shifts, and the kind of exhaustion that left her swaying on her feet. The memories hadn't surfaced in years, buried under penthouses and board meetings, but now they crowded in fast and unwelcome. He grabbed his coat and keys, striding out the door with his phone already ringing. The diner was small, squeezed between a laundromat and a pawn shop, the sign above the door flickering with every gust of wind. Marcus paused outside, hands shoved in his coat pockets, eyes narrowing on the woman behind the counter, dark curls, tired eyes, a weary smile stretched too tight. She looked younger than he'd expected, no lines at the corners of her eyes, cheeks still full despite the exhaustion that clung to her like a shadow. A waitress called her name, Ashley, and she turned, brushing a stray curl behind her ear as she balanced a tray with one hand, coffee pot with the other. He slipped inside, the bell above the door chiming. No one paid him much mind, the lunchtime rush filling every booth and barstool. Marcus found a seat near the window, eyes flickering between the menu and Ashley, who darted between tables with a forced smile and a voice too soft to carry over the noise. She was quick but not hurried, smile never faltering even when a customer snapped or waved a hand impatiently. Her hand shook a bit when she reached for the coffee pot, though, and Marcus's brow furrowed, fingers tapping a slow rhythm against the menu. When she finally made her way over, notepad in hand. Her eyes flickered with something wary but polite. "What can I get you?" Her voice was softer than he'd expected. Marcus cleared his throat, glancing at the menu. "Just coffee. Black." She nodded, jotting it down with a quick flourish, curls slipping from behind her ear. Up close, the dark circles under her eyes were more obvious, the way her shoulders slumped under the faded uniform. Marcus hesitated. "You're Mateo's mom," he said, keeping his tone light. Ashley blinked, eyes snapping to his face, hand freezing around the notepad. Her lips parted, shock bleeding into suspicion. Do I know you?" He pulled a business card from his coat pocket, sliding it across the table. "Marcus Holt," he said. "I met Mateo yesterday. Bought a few of his trophies." Her eyes narrowed, fingers hesitating before snatching up the card. She stared at it, lips pressing into a tight line. "Right," she muttered. "Look, I don't know what he told you, but we're fine. We don't need Dash, not charity." Marcus cut in, hands raised in a placating gesture. "Just a job offer. Part-time. For Mateo." Her eyes flashed, lips tightening. "He's 8. She snapped. "I know," Marcus said quickly. "It's just filing papers, running files around the office. I'd pay him fairly." Ashley's grip on the notepad tightened. "Why?" she demanded. "Why would you even dash?" He shrugged, glancing to the side. "He's a good kid," he muttered. "Deserves better than selling his trophies on a street corner." Her breath hitched, eyes dropping. She ran a hand through her hair, curls catching between her fingers, and her shoulders slumped a bit more. For a long moment, she said nothing, teeth worrying at her bottom lip. Finally, she blew out a breath, shoulders rising and falling with the force of it. "I'll think about it," she mumbled. Marcus's chest eased, a tight breath leaving in a quiet rush. "That's all I ask?" The drive back was quiet, snow flurries swirling past the windows, the radio humming softly in the background. Marcus leaned back in his seat, eyes drifting shut, but the image of Ashley's tired eyes and Mateo's hesitant smile stuck, too sharp to ignore. When he got home, the trophies were still on the table, catching the late afternoon light. He hesitated in the doorway, fingers curling around the strap of his briefcase, eyes fixed on the cracked base of a track trophy. The penthouse was too quiet, silence stretching heavy and uncomfortable. Marcus's jaw tightened, fingers flexing restlessly. He grabbed his phone, dialing quickly. "Jeremy. Call the legal team. I need a contract drawn up." He hung up without waiting for a response, eyes drifting to the trophies again. Each one gleamed softly, polished but worn, and his chest tightened, memories flickering, sleepless nights, overdue bills, running papers at the post office for a couple of bucks a day. The dull ache hadn't eased, but the decision felt a little clearer now, the path a little less uncertain. Tomorrow, he'd go back. Make the offer in person, and maybe just maybe start to fix things. The office buzzed with the usual noise, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, voices overlapping. Mateo's eyes were wide as he trailed behind Marcus, sneakers squeaking softly on the polished floor. He clutched his backpack with both hands, gaze darting from one cubicle to another with a mix of awe and nerves. Marcus led him through the maze of desks, stopping by a small corner office with a desk half buried under stacks of files. "This'll be your spot," he said, nodding to the chair. "Pretty simple stuff, just filing, organizing papers, maybe running a few down to accounting." Mateo's eyes practically glowed. "Really? Really?" The kid's grin was instant and wide, nearly splitting his face. He dropped his bag, nearly tripping over his own feet as he scrambled into the chair, hands hovering uncertainly over the files. For a second, Marcus just watched, a faint smile tugging at his lips. A few of the staff poked their heads out of their offices, eyebrows shooting up at the sight of the kid twisting around in the chair, trying to reach the top drawer without falling. Karen from marketing chuckled, winking at Marcus as she passed. "New intern?" she teased. Marcus shrugged. "Something like that." Mateo's enthusiasm was contagious. By the end of the first hour, he'd made 2 runs to the mailroom and filed half a stack of papers with a focus that made even the older interns look lazy. Every time someone thanked him, his cheeks turned pink and his grin stretched wider. By the time the clock hit 3, though, his eyes were starting to droop, head nodding with every other blink. Marcus chuckled, dropping a muffin on the desk with a shrug. Figured you could use a break. Mateo blinked, eyes round. For me? Who else? He tore into the muffin with a mumbled thanks, crumbs already dotting the folder in front of him. Marcus leaned back against the desk, arms crossed, a faint smile lingering. You like the job? It's awesome! Mateo mumbled around a mouthful of chocolate chip. Good, Marcus said. We'll see how you feel when I give you the filing cabinet from accounting. Mateo snorted, cheeks bulging, and Marcus's chest eased a bit more. The elevator ride back down was quiet but comfortable. Mateo was still munching on his muffin, fingers sticky and eyes bright. Marcus's phone buzzed with a dozen unread emails, but for once, he ignored them, focus fixed on the kid twisting back and forth on his heels. When they pulled up outside the apartment building, Mateo bounced out first, sneakers slapping against the pavement. Marcus followed more slowly, fingers flexing nervously around the car door handle. Ashley opened the door after the first knock, eyebrows shooting up at the sight of Marcus on her doorstep, Mateo practically vibrating beside him. Her eyes narrowed. A what? Marcus cleared his throat. Wanted to talk, he said, a bit awkward. About Mateo's job. Her gaze flicked between them, eyes narrowing further. Inside, she muttered, stepping back with a sigh. The apartment was small but warm, a few framed photos on the wall and a blanket tossed over the back of the couch. Mateo darted to the kitchen, dragging out a carton of juice and pouring half of it into a cup, still chattering about the copy machine that made funny noises. Ashley leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, eyes fixed on Marcus. So, she said, tone flat. Explain. He rubbed the back of his neck. It's just a part-time job. He started. A few hours a week, mostly filing and running papers. Nothing too stressful. She arched a brow. And the catch? There isn't one, he said quickly. I just figured he deserved better than selling his trophies. Her jaw tightened, eyes flickering. We're fine, she snapped. We don't need Dash, it's not charity. Marcus cut in. Just a job. He can quit anytime he wants. No strings. She stared, lips pressing into a thin line, fingers flexing where they gripped her sleeves. For a long moment, she said nothing, eyes flickering over his face like she was searching for a lie. Mateo peeked over the counter, cheeks puffed out with a mouthful of chips, eyes darting between them nervously. Ashley's shoulders slumped a bit, a sigh slipping free. I don't dash, I know, Marcus said quickly. Just think about it. She hesitated, eyes softening by a fraction, lips twisting with something uncertain. Fine, she muttered. Mateo beamed, juice sloshing over the rim of his cup, and Marcus's chest eased, tension slipping away. The conversation shifted lighter topics, safer ground. Ashley's shoulders eased a bit more, lips twitching with reluctant smiles. She asked about the job, about what exactly Mateo would be doing, her eyes narrowing suspiciously at any mention of pay. When Mateo slipped off to his room, dragging a comic book and still grinning, Marcus hesitated, fingers flexing nervously. I actually had one more thing, he started, voice a bit rough. Ashley's eyes narrowed instantly. Of course you do. He cleared his throat, fingers drumming against the back of the chair. About Mateo's schooling, he said slowly. Figured. Maybe I could help with that too. Tuition. Books. No press, no cameras, just help. Her eyes widened, lips parting. You want to sponsor him? If he keeps his grades up, Marcus said quickly, and sticks with the job part-time. Her jaw clenched, eyes darting to the hallway where Mateo's muffled giggles drifted through the door. Why? she demanded, voice low. He deserves it, Marcus muttered, eyes dropping. And? Because I can. She stared, eyes flickering with something raw and unsure. Her fingers twisted in her sleeves, breath shuddering softly. You don't owe us anything, she whispered. I know, he said. But I want to. Her breath hitched, eyes shimmering. For a long moment neither spoke, the silence heavy and uncertain. Then Ashley sighed, scrubbing a hand over her face. I'll think about it, she muttered, voice small. His chest eased, a breath slipping free. That's all I ask? Her eyes dropped, fingers twisting in the hem of her shirt, cheeks a bit pink. Marcus hesitated, fingers brushing her sleeve lightly, a question more than anything. She glanced up, eyes wide, cheeks flushing darker. For a second, something warm flickered between them, brief but steady, unspoken words lingering. Ashley cleared her throat quickly, stepping back. Thanks, she mumbled, voice awkward but soft. Marcus chuckled, breathless. Anytime. He turned to leave, chest lighter than it had been in days. As the door clicked shut behind him, a faint smile tugged at his lips, the echo of Mateo's laughter trailing after him. Mateo took to the job faster than Marcus expected. Within a week, he had half the office wrapped around his finger-shy smiles and polite thank yous that left even the grumpiest accountants grinning. By the second week, he was practically a regular at Karen's desk in marketing, scarfing down cookies while she talked his ear off about campaign pitches. Marcus watched from his office more often than he meant to, half listening to calls and skimming reports with one eye on the kid darting between cubicles, sneakers squeaking on the tiles. Mateo's grin was wide and easy, even when he tripped over a stack of files or knocked a coffee cup half off a desk. Hey, superstar, Marcus called one afternoon, leaning against his office door with arms crossed. Mateo's head snapped up, cheeks pink. I didn't break anything, he blurted quickly. Marcus chuckled. Not yet anyway, he teased. Come here for a sec. Mateo darted over, eyes wide. Hungry? Marcus nodded toward the elevator. Lunch is on me. Mateo's eyes lit up, and he was already halfway down the hall before Marcus could blink. They ended up at a sandwich shop down the street, Mateo tearing into a BLT with all the focus of a kid who hadn't seen food in days. Marcus leaned back, sipping coffee, half listening to Mateo's ramble about school and video games. You ever play Mario Kart? Mateo asked through a mouthful of chips. Once, Marcus admitted. Lost terribly. Mateo snorted, crumbs scattering. Bet I could beat you, he challenged, eyes glinting. Marcus smirked. Bet you couldn't. Their lunches became a regular thing, sandwiches and burgers at the diner on 5th, Mateo's eyes bright and wide with every news story Marcus shared. At first, Marcus kept it light, funny stories about office mishaps and the time his assistant accidentally CC'd the entire board on an email about cat videos. But somehow, they drifted to stories from years back about growing up broke, delivering newspapers at dawn, and skipping lunch to save bus money. Mateo listened with rapt attention, crumbs dotting his shirt, eyes wide. Did you ever win any trophies? He asked one afternoon, lips stained pink from strawberry lemonade. Marcus chuckled. Once, he admitted. Spelling bee. Still can't spell rendezvous right. Mateo giggled, feet swinging under the table, and Marcus's chest ached in a way he hadn't felt in years. He stopped by Ashley's apartment more often, dinners balanced in one hand, awkward smiles and soft greetings that grew warmer each time. The first few visits were stiff, Ashley's eyes wary and lips tight. But after a while, her smiles came easier, less forced. You're spoiling him, she scolded one evening, eyeing the takeout bags with a brow raised. Just feeding him, Marcus argued. She huffed, rolling her eyes, but took the bags anyway, lips twitching. Dinner was warm, Mateo chattering happily between bites of noodles, Ashley's shoulders relaxing bit by bit. Marcus found himself leaning back, fingers tapping absently against the table, eyes drifting between Mateo's wide grin and Ashley's soft smiles. Their conversation stretched longer, light, comfortable topics that never dipped too deep. Movies, books, the best pizza in the city. Ashley's voice softened, eyes brightening when she talked about her students at the diner who left her notes, folded under their plates. Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. They've got good taste, he teased. Ashley flushed, tossing a napkin at him with a half-hearted glare. Shut up, she mumbled, but her eyes glinted. Mateo's grades started creeping up too, papers marked with bright red A's and smiley faces. He waved them around proudly, cheeks pink and eyes glinting, and Marcus couldn't help the wide grin that stretched across his face each time. The staff noticed too. Karen called him the office mascot, ruffling his hair whenever he passed by, and even John from accounting stopped grumbling long enough to teach Mateo how to work the copy machine without jamming it. One afternoon, Marcus found Mateo half asleep at a desk in the corner, cheeks smushed against a stack of folders, pencil dangling from one hand. Marcus chuckled, draping his coat over the kid's shoulders. You look comfortable, he teased. Mateo mumbled something unintelligible, eyes still shut. The visits to Ashley stretched longer to coffee after dinner, feet propped up on the coffee table. Mateo passed out on the couch with a comic book sprawled across his chest. Ashley would roll her eyes, drape a blanket over him, and drop onto the armchair with a soft sigh, fingers curling around a steaming mug. Her eyes softened when she looked at Mateo, fond, tired, a little sad. Marcus cleared his throat, eyes dropping. You're doing good, he said quietly. She snorted. Sure doesn't feel like it, she muttered. You are, he insisted. He's a good kid. That's all you. She hesitated, eyes glinting. For a second, something unspoken lingered, soft and raw and warm. Then she huffed, rolling her eyes. Stop being nice, she mumbled. It's weird. Marcus chuckled, shoulders easing. No promises. The snow started sticking by the end of the month, turning the streets white and slushy. Mateo stomped in one afternoon, cheeks pink and hair damp, hands buried in the sleeves of Marcus's coat. Need a ride home? Marcus asked. Mateo's eyes brightened, head bobbing eagerly. By the time they pulled up outside the apartment, the snow was falling heavier, wind biting and harsh. Mateo darted inside, nearly tripping over the welcome mat, and Marcus followed more slowly, fingers flexing nervously around the strap of his briefcase. Ashley opened the door, brow arching at the sight of Marcus dusting snow from his sleeves. You're gonna catch pneumonia, she scolded. He smirked. Worried about me? Her cheeks flushed. Hardly, she muttered, stepping back to let him in. Dinner was warm leftovers and reheated lasagna, Mateo chattering between mouthfuls and Ashley chuckling softly, eyes glinting. Marcus found himself leaning back, eyes drifting over the soft glow of the Christmas lights strung along the window and the framed photos on the wall. Mateo, gap-toothed and grinning, Ashley younger, hair longer and eyes bright. He hesitated, fingers brushing absently over the edge of the table. You should take a day off, he said. Ashley snorted. Can't afford it, she muttered. I'll cover it, Marcus offered without thinking. She shot him a glare, lips pressing tight. Not a charity case, she snapped. Didn't say you were, he countered, lips quirking. She huffed, eyes rolling. You're impossible, she muttered, but her voice was softer. Mateo's Snickers drifted from the living room, sprawled half off the couch with a comic book balanced on his chest. Ashley's eyes softened, lips twitching. Thanks, she mumbled, barely a whisper. Marcus chuckled, leaning back. Anytime, he said easily. The snow fell harder outside, piling up in soft mounds on the windowsill. Inside, the apartment was warm, lights twinkling, Mateo's sleepy mumbles and Ashley's soft laughs filling the silence. And for the first time in years, Marcus found himself reluctant to leave. The headlines hit before Marcus even reached the office. His phone buzzed nonstop with texts and emails, subject lines screaming words like betrayal and PR stunt. By the time he pushed through the glass doors, the staff was already whispering, eyes darting away as he passed. He yanked off his coat, barely sparing a glance at the nervous assistant trailing behind him. "Get me a copy!" he snapped. "Now." Jeremy stumbled back with a nod, nearly tripping over a wastebasket in his hurry. Marcus slumped into his chair, fingers raking through his hair, jaw clenched tight. His laptop screen glared with the headline Billionaire CEO's PR stunt, exploiting a widow and her son for sympathy? The article was brutal photos of him with Ashley and Matteo outside the apartment, quotes twisted beyond recognition. It painted him as a manipulator, using a struggling family to claw back public sympathy. Every word dripped with venom, each line a carefully aimed knife. Marcus swore under his breath, slamming the laptop shut with a snap. His chest burned, a mix of fury and something cold, a betrayal. The photos were internal security feed shots and press exclusives. Only someone inside could have leaked them. His fists clenched, nails biting into his palms. "Jeremy!" The door creaked open, Jeremy peeking in with eyes wide and nervous. "Yes, sir?" "Find out who did this," Marcus snapped. "And get legal on the phone." Jeremy squeaked out a yes, practically fleeing down the hall. The phone rang barely a minute later. Marcus snatched it up, words already half-formed, but the voice on the other end stopped him cold. "Marcus." "Ashley." His breath caught. "Ashley, don't." Her voice was raw, cracked at the edges. "Just don't." His fingers tightened around the receiver, chest tight. "It's not true," he said quickly. "None of it, How am I supposed to believe that?" she snapped, voice shaking. "I trusted you, I let you into our lives, It's a setup," he insisted. "Someone leaked those photos, twisted the story." "Ashley, I swear, She laughed, but it was brittle, sharp enough to cut. "You really are shameless," she spat. "Was any of it real, or was it all just part of your little redemption arc?" The words hit like ice water, leaving him breathless. "Ashley, please," he choked. "I don't want to hear it," she bit out. "Just stay away from us." The line went dead with a soft click. Marcus stared at the phone, ears ringing, breath catching painfully. The words blurred, "stay away," and for a second, the room seemed to tilt, the floor unsteady beneath his feet. A knock broke through the fog, the door cracking open slowly. "Sir?" Jeremy stammered, eyes darting nervously. "Others. Someone here to see you?" Before Marcus could respond, a small figure shoved past Jeremy, cheeks flushed and eyes glassy. "Matteo." His breath stuttered, hands lifting instinctively. "Matteo, you used us?" Matteo's voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. His fists trembled at his sides, knuckles white. "It was all just for the cameras?" Marcus's chest tightened, hands flexing helplessly. "God, no, Matteo, I would never, Matteo flinched back, eyes glistening with betrayal. "I quit," he choked, voice thick. "I don't want your stupid job, I don't want anything from you." "Wait," Marcus pleaded, but Matteo was already gone, darting down the hallway, sneakers slapping against the floor. The door slammed with a force that rattled the frame, leaving the office dark and suffocatingly silent. Marcus slumped back into his chair, breath shuddering, fingers dragging through his hair. The betrayal cut deep, raw and unfiltered, but beneath it was something worse, guilt, cold and unshakable. The investigation started within the hour, legal storming in, voices clipped and furious. Emails were pulled, phone logs scoured, every security feed rewound and played back frame by frame. Marcus moved through it all like a ghost, chest tight and pulse a dull roar in his ears. It didn't take long for a name to surface: Michael Paulson, head of PR. An inbox full of forwarded emails, files tagged and retagged, each one a glaring red flag. Paulson's office was already cleared out by the time Marcus stormed down the hall, empty file cabinets and a blinking cursor on a computer screen the only evidence left. The news hit the media like a hammer. Emergency press conferences, security dragging Paulson out of the parking garage in cuffs. Marcus stood at the podium, cameras flashing, each question sharp and biting. It was an internal leak. He bit out, fingers tight around the edges of the podium. I take full responsibility for allowing it to happen. A reporter shot to his feet, microphone thrust forward. So the claims about exploiting a widow and her son dash? False. Marcus snapped, jaw tight. Ashley Delmore and her son did nothing wrong. They were victims of a deliberate smear campaign, and I'll do everything in my power to make this right. The words tasted bitter, too late and too little, but they were all he had. His hands were still shaking when he pushed through the crowd, breaths coming short and uneven. The car ride to Ashley's apartment was a blur, lights and sirens streaking past, the city dark and unwelcoming. He barely remembered knocking, but the door swung open sharply, Ashley's eyes bloodshot and lips pressed tight. Ashley, he started, voice cracked. Her jaw clenched. I told you to stay away. It wasn't true, he pleaded. Paulson set it up, he twisted everything. You have to believe me, Dash. Her eyes glistened, voice raw. Why should I? His breath stuttered, fingers curling helplessly. Because I care about you, he admitted hoarsely. About Mateo. I never meant for any of this to happen, I swear, Ashley, I just... She laughed, but it broke halfway through, a sob catching in her throat. You're unbelievable, she muttered, hand dragging over her face. His chest ached, breath catching. Please, he rasped. Just tell Mateo I'm sorry. Her eyes softened, lips quivering, but she bit down, hard, turning away sharply. The door slammed with a force that rattled the walls, leaving Marcus alone on the darkened porch, snow catching in his hair, breath clouding in the cold. He slumped back against the railing, eyes shut tight, the world spinning. His chest burned, raw and hollow, guilt twisting deep and unrelenting. The city stretched out below, lights blurred through snowflakes, and for the first time in years, Marcus had no idea what to do next. The press conference room buzzed with tension, reporters packed shoulder to shoulder, cameras glinting under harsh lights, microphones lined up in neat rows. Marcus stood behind the podium, fingers tight around the edges, pulse a dull roar in his ears. The projector clicked on, the screen filling with email chains and file stamps all marked with Michael Paulson's name. A few gasps rippled through the crowd, cameras flashing faster. Marcus forced out a breath, eyes sweeping over the sea of faces, each one sharp and waiting for him to slip. An internal investigation confirmed that the story about Ashley Delmore and her son was fabricated, he said, voice steady. Michael Paulson acted alone, without my knowledge or approval. Effective immediately, he has been terminated and faces charges for breach of trust and defamation. Reporters shot up, questions flying fast and relentless. Marcus held up a hand, cutting through the noise. I take full responsibility for allowing this to happen, he said. Ashley and Mateo Delmore did nothing wrong. They were victims of a malicious smear campaign, and I will do everything in my power to make this right. The room buzzed, microphones shoved forward. A reporter in the front row jabbed a pen into her notebook. Is this an attempt at damage control, Mr. Holt? It's the truth, Marcus snapped. And if you want proof, I've authorized the release of the full investigation report. You'll find copies at the door. Murmurs rippled, questions overlapping, but Marcus was already turning away, pulse still hammering. He caught Jeremy's wide eyes by the exit, mouth half open in shock. Marcus ignored him, shrugging on his coat and pushing through the back door into the biting wind. His hands still shook when he slid into the car, breath fogging in the cold. He scrubbed a hand over his face, exhaustion pulling at every bone. The driver glanced back, brow raised. Where to, sir? Marcus hesitated, jaw tight. Ashley's, he muttered. The ride was tense and quiet, the radio humming soft and tinny. Marcus drummed his fingers against his knee, replaying the press conference in his head, each word, each pause, every flash of a camera. It hadn't fixed anything, not really, but it was a start. Ashley's apartment building loomed, windows glowing warm against the dark. He hesitated at the curb, fingers flexing around the car door handle. His breath misted in the cold, heart pounding fast and uneven. When he knocked, the door opened slowly. Ashley's eyes were red-rimmed but wary, one hand curled around the doorframe. She blinked, lips parting in surprise. "Hi," Marcus started awkwardly. Her jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. "What do you want?" "To talk," he said quickly. "Please." She hesitated, eyes flickering down the hall, then blew out a breath, stepping back. He slipped inside, warmth rushing over him, and she shut the door quietly, fingers flexing nervously at her sides. The apartment was quiet, no Matteo in sight, only the faint hum of the heater. Ashley crossed her arms, brow arched. "So talk." He cleared his throat, eyes dropping. "I'm sorry," he started. "For everything. For putting you and Matteo in this mess. You didn't deserve that." Her eyes glinted, lips twisting. "You think an apology is enough?" "No," he admitted quickly. "But it's a start. And I meant what I said. I'll fix this." She snorted, but the sharpness was duller, shoulders slumping a bit. "How?" "I'll cover the legal fees," he said. "And the scholarship, it's still yours. No strings." She stared, lips parting, eyes glistening with disbelief. "Why?" "Because I care," he said simply. Her breath hitched, eyes darting to the window, jaw clenching. "You should go," she mumbled. He took a step back, pulse stumbling. "Right. Yeah. Just tell Matteo I'm sorry." Marcus turned, breath catching, fingers brushing the doorknob. But Ashley's voice stopped him, small, cracked, barely a whisper. "Wait." He glanced back, breath stilling. She exhaled slowly, eyes glistening, arms wrapping tighter around herself. "Thank you," she mumbled. "For fighting for us." His chest tightened, breath shuddering out in a shaky laugh. "Anytime." Her eyes softened, lips twitching. For a moment neither spoke, the silence warm and breathless, snow falling soft outside the window. Marcus hesitated, fingers flexing. "Ashley, I dash." She bit her lip, eyes flickering, and before he could finish, her fingers curled into the front of his coat, yanking him down. Her lips were soft, breath warm, fingers trembling where they gripped his lapels. Marcus's eyes fluttered shut instinctively, hands lifting to cradle her face, careful and reverent. The kiss was slow, no rush, no desperation, just warm and soft and real. Ashley's breath shuddered, fingers twisting tighter, and Marcus's chest ached, warmth spreading slow and steady. When they pulled back, foreheads resting together, Ashley's eyes fluttered open, cheeks pink and eyes wide. Her lips quirked, breath hitching. "This is crazy," she mumbled. Marcus chuckled, breathless. "Probably." She snorted, cheeks flushing darker, but her eyes glinted with something warmer, less guarded. For a second, everything narrowed to the soft glow of the lights and the snow falling behind the window, her fingers still twisted in his coat and his breath mingling with hers. Her eyes dropped, fingers flexing nervously, but she didn't pull back. Marcus's chest eased, a shaky laugh slipping free, and for the first time in weeks, the guilt that had twisted in his gut eased, just a bit. Outside, the snow fell soft and steady, blanketing the city in white. Inside, the silence stretched warm and easy, and Marcus let himself breathe, let the warmth linger. Maybe, just maybe, things weren't completely broken. The calls started with questions about Matteo's school or updates on the scholarship-safe topics that kept things light. But soon they stretched longer. Evenings blurred into late nights with Marcus leaning back in his office chair, phone pressed to his ear, Ashley's voice soft and warm through the speaker. They talked about everything and nothing: the latest disaster in marketing, Ashley's students at the diner, the stray cat Matteo kept feeding despite her protests. The silence between words was comfortable, unhurried, broken only by the occasional chuckle or Ashley's muffled yawns. Dinner at her apartment became routine, Marcus arriving with takeout bags and a sheepish grin, Mateo bounding to the door with eyes bright. Ashley would roll her eyes but let them in, cheeks faintly pink. Their conversations were easy lighter than before. They argued over which movie to watch, Ashley's nose wrinkling at action flicks while Mateo campaigned fiercely for superhero marathons. Marcus usually lost, which Mateo celebrated with exaggerated fist pumps and smug grins. One night, Mateo fell asleep halfway through a movie, mouth parted and cheek pressed to Marcus's shoulder. Ashley chuckled, eyes glinting, and nudged him with a fond sigh. "You're a bad influence," she teased, voice warm. Marcus smirked. "He's fine," he muttered but didn't move, arm cradling Mateo instinctively. Ashley's eyes softened, lips quirking, and for a moment, the noise from the TV faded, the room stretching warm and quiet. The scholarship papers were signed a week later, a small fund in Mateo's name for underprivileged kids. No cameras, no press, just a simple letter delivered to Ashley's mailbox. Her hands trembled when she opened it, eyes scanning the lines with a mix of disbelief and something raw. She called that evening, voice cracked but soft. "You didn't have to do that," she mumbled. "I wanted to," Marcus said simply. Her breath hitched, silence stretching for a moment too long. "Thank you," she whispered finally. "Anytime," he murmured, lips twitching. The words lingered warm and steady, and Ashley's sigh slipped soft through the speaker, almost fond. Mateo returned to work a few days later, practically bouncing down the office halls, sneakers squeaking on the tiles. The staff greeted him with warm smiles and waves, Karen from marketing stuffing a cookie into his hand with a wink. Marcus watched from his office, a faint smile tugging at his lips as Mateo darted between cubicles, grin wide and eyes bright. The kid adjusted to the routine quickly, filing papers with an enthusiasm that made even the older interns look lazy. Mateo's chatter filled the office, bright and unfiltered, stories about school and the stray cat that kept getting into the trash. Marcus found himself lingering by the copier more often, nodding along to tales about math tests and dodgeball victories with a smirk. By the end of the month, the office felt warmer, less corporate glass and steel, more friendly ribbing and Karen's terrible baking. Marcus's shoulders eased a bit more each day, the usual tightness in his chest fading with every one of Mateo's grins. The charity gala came fast, invitations printed in gold and white, lights strung along marble pillars and music echoing soft and slow. Marcus adjusted his tie, fingers flexing nervously, eyes flickering to the door for the 10th time in as many minutes. When Ashley and Mateo finally arrived, Marcus's breath stuttered. Ashley's dress was soft blue, simple but elegant, curls framing her face, eyes glinting under the lights. Mateo's tiny suit was slightly too big, sleeves brushing his knuckles, but his grin was wide and unguarded, eyes round as he took in the chandeliers and polished floors. Marcus stepped forward, lips twitching. "You clean up nice," he teased lightly. Ashley snorted, cheeks flushing faintly. "Shut up," she muttered, but her eyes glinted with something softer. Mateo bounced on his heels, eyes darting between the buffet table and the grand piano with barely restrained awe. Marcus chuckled, ruffling the boy's hair with a smirk. "Hungry?" Mateo's head bobbed eagerly, eyes bright. By the time the music shifted slower, Mateo was half asleep against a pillar, cheeks pink and mouth parted. Marcus chuckled, draping a jacket over him, eyes glinting with fond amusement. He turned, clearing his throat, eyes flickering to Ashley. "Can I have this dance?" Her brows shot up, cheeks flushing. "You're kidding," she muttered. "Wouldn't dream of it." He smirked. She huffed, eyes rolling, but after a second's hesitation, her fingers slipped into his, warm and steady. The music was soft strings and piano, slow and unhurried. Marcus's hand settled at her waist, careful and light, and Ashley's breath stuttered, eyes flickering uncertainly. "Relax?" he chuckled. "I don't bite." She snorted, cheeks pink. "Not what I'm worried about," she mumbled. He grinned, lips quirking. "Not worried, huh?" Her eyes glinted, lips twitching. You're ridiculous. He chuckled, shoulders easing. Her head tipped forward slowly, resting against his shoulder, breath warm against his collar. Marcus's eyes fluttered shut instinctively, hand flexing at her waist. The room narrowed to soft lights and warm violins, Ashley's breath mingling with his, slow and steady. Her fingers curled instinctively against his chest, a soft, barely there pressure, and Marcus's chest tightened, warmth spreading slow and steady. When the song shifted, slower and softer, her eyes flickered up, lashes brushing her cheeks. Marcus hesitated, breath catching, fingers brushing her cheek with a question more than a promise. Ashley's eyes softened, lips parting, and she leaned up hesitant, careful fingers curling into the front of his jacket. The kiss was soft, unhurried, no rush, no desperation, just warm and simple and real. Ashley's breast shuddered, fingers twisting a bit tighter, and Marcus's eyes fluttered shut, chest aching with something raw and steady. The world blurred, lights and music and the faint chatter from across the room, Ashley's lips warm and soft, breath mingling with his in a way that left his pulse stumbling. When they pulled back, her cheeks were flushed, eyes bright and wide, lips quivering with a soft, breathless laugh. Marcus chuckled, forehead resting against hers. You still mad? He teased. She snorted, cheeks burning. A little, she mumbled, but her eyes glinted, fingers not letting go. His smirk softened, eyes glinting. I can live with that, he murmured. She huffed, eyes rolling, but her lips quirked, eyes flickering down with something softer. They stayed like that for a moment, music soft, lights twinkling, Ashley's fingers curling warm and steady. For the first time in years, Marcus let himself breathe, let the warmth linger. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally looking up. Snow dusted the city in soft white, streetlights glowing warm against the dark. Marcus tightened his scarf, hands shoved deep in his pockets, breath misting in the cold. The streets were quieter than usual, most people home, lights glowing in windows, wreaths on doors and garlands twined along railings. Mateo darted ahead, boots crunching in the snow, eyes bright. His nose was pink, scarf trailing behind him, but his grin stretched wide, unbothered by the cold. Ashley followed more slowly, gloved fingers brushing the snow from her coat, cheeks flushed and eyes glinting. Marcus's chest eased, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The apartment was warm and bright, lights twinkling on the small Christmas tree by the window. A few gifts lay scattered beneath it, wrapping paper bright and wrinkled. The scent of hot chocolate lingered, mugs steaming on the table. Mateo bolted inside, kicking off snow-dusted boots with little care, half tripping over the welcome mat. Marcus chuckled, shrugging off his coat and hanging it beside Ashley's, fingers brushing her sleeve briefly. Her cheeks flushed faintly, lips quirking, but she didn't pull away. Mateo was already half buried under the tree, fingers brushing over the boxes, eyes wide and excited. Can I open this one? Ashley snorted. You'll open them all before dinner if I let you, she teased. Just one, Mateo pleaded, eyes wide. Marcus chuckled, slumping onto the couch. Go for it, he muttered. Mateo didn't need to be told twice. Paper tore, a flurry of red and green, and Mateo's eyes went impossibly wide at the sight of the glass case nestled inside, polished and pristine, trophies lined up in neat rows behind the clear pane. Each one gleamed, cracks smoothed and bases glued, gold lettering bright and clear. His breath caught, hands trembling where they traced over the glass. A folded note lay tucked between two of the trophies, handwriting careful and even. Your pride is priceless. Mateo's fingers clenched, breath shuddering with a soft, disbelieving laugh. He blinked rapidly, eyes darting between the note and the trophies, cheeks flushing. Ashley's breath caught, eyes glistening, fingers brushing her lips. Marcus, she whispered, voice small and cracked. Marcus shrugged, lips twitching. Figured they belonged at home, he muttered, voice gruff. Mateo's head snapped up, eyes glassy. He lunged forward, arms wrapping tight around Marcus's middle with enough force to knock him back against the cushions. Thank you, Mateo choked, voice muffled against his sweater. Thank you, Dash. Marcus chuckled, arms lifting instinctively, hand cradling the back of Mateo's head. Anytime, superstar, he muttered. Ashley's eyes glistened, lips quivering, and she scrubbed quickly at her cheeks, a soft, wobbly laugh slipping free. They settled on the couch after that, Mateo still half clinging to Marcus's side, trophies balanced carefully on the coffee table. Ashley leaned back with a soft sigh, feet tucked under her, eyes drifting fondly between Mateo's bright grin and Marcus's sheepish smirk. Dinner was warm leftovers and reheated lasagna, Mateo chattering with crumbs dotting his chin, eyes bright and unguarded. Ashley rolled her eyes at every bad joke, cheeks pink, eyes glinting with fond exasperation. When Mateo finally drifted off, cheek pressed to Marcus's arm, comic books slipping from his fingers, Ashley chuckled, shaking her head. You're gonna spoil him, she teased. Marcus smirked. Not my fault he's a lightweight, he muttered, shifting to tuck a blanket over the kid's shoulders. Ashley's eyes softened, lips quirking. You're ridiculous, she mumbled, but her voice was warm, eyes glinting with something softer. The apartment stretched quiet, only the soft hum of the heater and Mateo's sleepy breaths breaking the silence. Marcus hesitated, fingers flexing, eyes flickering to Ashley, who sipped her cocoa with eyes half shut. "Wanna step outside?" he asked, voice rough. She blinked, brows furrowing, but nodded slowly, lips quirking. The porch was quiet, snow piling on the railing in soft mounds, wind biting but not harsh. Marcus leaned back against the rail, eyes drifting over the city stretched out below, lights blurred through snowflakes, the faint sound of traffic a dull hum. Ashley pulled her coat tighter, breath misting in the cold, eyes glinting faintly under the porch light. For a moment neither spoke, silence warm and unhurried, snowflakes catching in her curls and melting in glistening beads. Marcus cleared his throat, fingers flexing nervously. "So," he started, voice cracking. Ashley arched a brow. "So," she echoed, lips twitching. He chuckled, sheepish. "Not great at this," he admitted. "I notice," she teased. His chest eased a bit, lips twitching. "Guess I care," he muttered, voice gruff. "About you. About Mateo. About all of it." Her eyes softened, lips parting. "I know I messed up," he added quickly. "But I want to fix it if you'll let me." Her breath hitched, eyes glistening. For a moment the silence stretched, snow falling soft, city lights glinting far below, Marcus's pulse stumbling fast and uneven. Then Ashley chuckled, soft and breathless, eyes dropping with a faint, wobbly smile. "You're such an idiot," she muttered, voice cracked but fond. He snorted, shoulders easing. "Probably," he admitted. She huffed, eyes rolling, but her fingers curled into the front of his coat, tugging him down with a soft, exasperated sigh. Her lips were cold, breath warm, fingers trembling but steady. Marcus's eyes fluttered shut instinctively, hands lifting to cradle her face, careful and reverent. The kiss was soft, slow, no rush, no desperation, just warm and simple and real. Ashley's breast shuddered, fingers twisting tighter, and Marcus's chest ached, warmth spreading slow and steady. When they pulled back, her cheeks were flushed, eyes glinting faintly under the porch light, lips quivering with a soft, breathless laugh. Marcus chuckled, forehead resting against hers. "You still mad?" he teased. She snorted, cheeks pink. "A little," she muttered, but her eyes glinted, fingers not letting go. His smirk softened, eyes glinting. "I can live with that," he murmured. She huffed, eyes rolling, but her lips quirked, eyes flickering down with something softer. They stayed like that for a moment, snow falling soft, city lights stretched out below, warmth lingering between them. The door creaked open suddenly, Mateo poking his head out, eyes wide. "Are you guys kissing again?" he groaned, nose wrinkling. Ashley snorted, cheeks burning, and Marcus chuckled, pressing a soft kiss to her temple, eyes glinting. "Maybe," he teased lightly. Mateo groaned dramatically, But his eyes glinted, lips twitching despite himself, and he rolled his eyes with an exasperated huff that was more fond than annoyed. They slipped back inside, warmth rushing to meet them, and Mateo's chatter filled the apartment, bright and excited, eyes glinting with something warm and unguarded. And as the snow fell outside, blanketing the city in soft white, Marcus let himself breathe, Ashley's head on his shoulder, Mateo's sleepy voice curling warm and easy. Months passed, and winter melted into spring. The snow vanished from the streets, replaced by soft rain and budding trees, but the warmth that had filled Ashley's apartment during the holidays never seemed to fade. Mateo was thriving, grades climbing, sneakers squeaking down office hallways, hands never quite clean of ink from filing papers. The staff at Holt Enterprises adored him, his chatter brightening the dullest afternoons. Karen from marketing still stuffed cookies into his hands every time he passed her desk, grinning when he mumbled shy thank yous through mouthfuls of chocolate chip. Ashley found herself smiling more often, the tightness in her chest easing bit by bit. Her shifts at the diner felt shorter, less tiring, and each evening, she'd find Marcus waiting outside, leaning casually against his car with a sheepish grin, hands shoved in his pockets. "You're stalking me," she teased one evening, smirk tugging at her lips. He chuckled, shrugging. "Just looking for an excuse to buy you dinner." Her eyes glinted, cheeks pink, but she rolled her eyes with a huff, slipping into the passenger seat without much protest. Their dinners stretched longer, takeout containers littering the coffee table, Mateo chattering about school between mouthfuls of noodles, Ashley's laughs slipping easier and unguarded. Marcus found himself lingering, even when the clock ticked late and the city lights glinted soft and hazy through the curtains. The community center opened that summer, no press, no cameras, just a simple plaque by the door with Mateo's name etched in neat gold lettering. Single mothers and their kids filled the rooms, laughter and soft music drifting through the halls. Ashley stopped by one afternoon, fingers brushing over the plaque, breath catching. Marcus watched from the entrance, hands flexing nervously in his coat pockets. When she turned, eyes glistening, lips quivering with a soft, disbelieving laugh, he chuckled, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. "Told you it was no big deal," he mumbled. She snorted, cheeks flushed. "You're an idiot," she muttered, but her voice cracked, eyes glinting with something warm. "Yeah," he chuckled, eyes glinting. "But you're idiot, right?" Her lips quirked, eyes rolling fondly. "Shut up," she muttered, fingers curling instinctively into his sleeve. That autumn, Marcus moved into a townhouse a few blocks from Ashley's apartment, nothing fancy, but close enough for Mateo to pop by unannounced, cheeks pink and eyes bright, hands clutching math tests marked with bright red A's. By winter, Marcus knew the names of every teacher at Mateo's school, which bus he took, and the exact number of peanut butter sandwiches it took to cheer him up after a bad day. Mateo's room at the townhouse was bright and messy, posters half peeling from the walls, trophies lined up neatly on the shelf above the bed. He dragged Marcus to every soccer game, fingers clutching his sleeve with wide eyes and breathless explanations of penalty kicks and corner shots. Marcus found himself grinning more, shoulders easing, the weight that had hung heavy for years finally slipping away. The board meetings and PR strategies blurred to the background, less urgent, less sharp, replaced by spelling tests, and scraped knees and Ashley's laugh drifting warm through the kitchen. Christmas came fast, lights strung along the eaves, snow piling high on the porch steps. Mateo darted between rooms, cheeks pink and eyes bright, fingers sticky with frosting. Ashley chuckled, shaking her head fondly, and Marcus's chest ached with something warm and steady. They spent the morning buried in wrapping paper and bad holiday movies, Mateo half asleep against Marcus's side, comic books slipping from his fingers, Ashley's head tucked beneath Marcus's chin. The fire crackled, warmth spreading slow and easy, and for once, the silence wasn't empty. That evening, they slipped outside, snow falling soft and steady, lights twinkling through the windows. Mateo had passed out on the couch, limbs sprawled and mouth parted, comics still half open on his chest. Ashley leaned against the porch railing, breath misting in the cold, eyes drifting over the snow-covered streets. Marcus hesitated, fingers flexing nervously, breath catching. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "So," he started, voice cracking. Ashley arched a brow, lips twitching. "So," she echoed, eyes glinting. He chuckled, sheepish. "Not great at this," he muttered. She snorted. "I noticed." His chest eased, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Just I care about you," he mumbled, voice gruff. "About Mateo. About all of it." Her eyes softened, breath hitching. "I know I messed up," he added quickly. "But I want this us. If you'll let me." She chuckled, soft and breathless, eyes glinting with something warm and unguarded. "You're such an idiot," she muttered fondly, voice cracked but warm. He snorted, shoulders easing. "Heard that before," he teased lightly. Her cheeks flushed, eyes darting down, but her fingers curled into his coat, tugging him down with a soft, exasperated sigh. The kiss was soft, no rush, no desperation, just warm and simple and real. Ashley's breast shuddered, fingers twisting tighter, and Marcus's eyes fluttered shut, chest aching with something raw and steady. When they pulled back, her cheeks were flushed, eyes glinting faintly, lips quivering with a soft, breathless laugh. Marcus chuckled, forehead resting against hers. "Still mad?" he teased lightly. She snorted, cheeks pink. "A little," she muttered, but her eyes glinted, fingers not letting go. He grinned, eyes glinting. "I can live with that," he murmured. She huffed, eyes rolling, but her lips quirked, eyes flickering down with something softer. Inside, Mateo's sleepy voice drifted from the couch, muffled and indignant. "You guys are always kissing," he groaned. Ashley snorted, cheeks burning, and Marcus chuckled, pressing a soft kiss to her temple, eyes glinting. "Maybe," he teased. Mateo groaned dramatically, but his eyes glinted, lips twitching despite himself, and he rolled his eyes with an exasperated huff that was more fond than annoyed. They slipped back inside, warmth rushing to meet them, and Mateo's chatter filled the apartment, bright and excited, eyes glinting with something warm and unguarded. As the snow fell outside, blanketing the city in soft white, Marcus let himself breathe, surrounded by warmth and laughter, and the steady beat of Ashley's heart under his palm. For the first time in years, the future stretched bright and open, unknown but warm, and Marcus let himself believe it was enough. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like, it really helps out the channel. And if you want more heartwarming and emotional stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this one. I'd love to hear your reactions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.